Next thing is another thing that's kind of different. I want to be able to go over a bunch of different stuff that we go over, but this still is very related to software engineering teams, and especially people who already work with stuff, especially in remote teams or in person teams. And I saw this Twitter thread where this dude Sergio Pereira, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Don't butcher me if I didn't pronounce it the correct way. But I wanted to kind of go through his thread a little bit, give him some credit, and put my thoughts on what he was saying in this as well too. This is kind of like having a guest, but not having a guest in a way. Uh, just reading off their tweets and things. But before we dive into this, like, comment, subscribe, and everything. It helps the algorithm out. Appreciate it all. And let's get into this because this is also something new. And hopefully, you guys can see this the right way. So I'm gonna just try to zoom in some. Hopefully it's showing the right way. I don't It's hard to tell. Um but could be a little better. Just want to make sure I can get all of this into frame and that it looks good. If you can't see this, I'm so sorry. But so he starts off, this is talking about, basically it's talking about some Scrum things. And I just wanted to show that it is his actual post and stuff. And he goes through so much information on here that I feel you can probably be able to learn from. If this doesn't look good, then my fault. This is the first time trying this. But he goes over why he doesn't use any Scrum to manage the remote teams and things, because he's first off saying that it adds at least 8 hours to his meetings per sprint. So that's a whole day. A sprint is 2 weeks, pretty much 10 days total. So out of 10 days, it means he only has 9 days to actually working because it adds 8 hours of meetings. So that's a whole day, that's a whole shift of meetings that he has to go through. But he's actually saying that that's a full 2 days of lost productivity per member per month. So each person loses 2 days, he's saying. Their sprints may, if there's his, he said per month, right? Yeah. Yeah, a full 2 days. So yeah, because every sprint that's 10 days. So in two every month you'll have two sprints in the month, which means if you lost one day in a sprint, you're gonna lose 2 days in the whole sprint. So he's gonna give some ideas on what you can do instead. Talks somewhat about his earlier career and using Scrum, because just everyone is doing it at work. We use Scrum stuff, I believe, or trying to adapt it and things. But what he's saying that normal Scrum meetings, how he's adding up to the 8 hours is because 2 hours of it is spent on grooming, just trying to figure out what you need, what tickets you need to be working on, and all of that jazz. Going through those tickets, filling in those tickets, giving those tickets points, assigning them to who they need to sign for. Sprint planning is people choosing the sprints, the tickets that they'll be working on in the sprints. So that's taking another hour and a half. And then stand ups. So I'm guessing this is a stand up per sprint. So this is if you have a stand up every single day for 15 minutes, just quickly going through your stuff that you went over and stuff from the previous day. It takes about 2.5 hours to do all your stand ups for every single day, because you're meeting with somebody every single day. So you have to find ways to meet with somebody every day. Maybe there's a way to cut back on meetings. You don't have to do a stand up every day, especially depending on the kind of work that you're doing, possibly. And then 2 hours for retrospective. That a retro is basically going over stuff that was completed, what happened good, what was bad, what could be worked on better, and all of that. So this is how he kind of got to the whole 8 hour time frame. Mind you, this may be a little bit different at your jobs. You might not have stand-ups every day. Your stand-ups might take longer than 15 minutes. The goal for stand-ups is to be 15 minutes for sure. So that is one thing around how that works. So those 8 hours basically of meetings just got in the way, and he doesn't want them to be that long. And another thing is possible is because meetings can get longer than what they're scheduled for. Something that comes out of habit a lot with working is, I'm gonna just bring full camera. Um, as I go through the rest of this, I figure you guys get the point of the thread. Um, Meetings are become, oh, you can get deep into talking about something in a meeting, and it gets drawn out so far, and it will continue to keep getting drawn out longer and longer and longer as time goes on, because that's just how meetings are. That's how meetings end up. That's how they go sometimes. Sometimes you guys get in a deep thought and you're trying to discuss it and solve it, and you go over time. Things like that happen. You're talking about something and it just keeps going over and over and over. And it takes a real skill to be able to cut off meetings at times where they cut off and reschedule these meetings elsewhere, because you do need to talk. You do need to have these communications. You do need to narrow down on stuff and things like that. So Sergio goes on to a point of reducing the meetings in the team. So he probably cut down on the number of sprints they had, but he wrote 7 ways to replace meetings and processes, and to be able to save some of this time and be able to reach a certain goal. So instead of doing a scrum, he chose to do something that's more of a goal oriented way of doing sprints and things, meaning you're trying to find a why and what you're trying to complete within those 2 sprints, and focus on that business goal rather than go through all of these meetings and all of the planning and things like that. Like, what business goal are you trying to complete in this sprint? So that would be one of the things. Um, so he comes through with a bunch of questions. So there's a lot of activities that a person has to do. You have to implement, you have to test, you have to create business cases. There's a bunch of things that an engineer has to do, that scrum leaders have to do, managers have to do. And basically Sergio then came up with 5 questions: a why, what, how, who, and when. And I believe he even made a Notion thing. I might try to find the Notion link about all of this that people can start using. But his why is the clear business case. What is the clear business case? What feature will that address? Will Yeah, that will address in the business case. That's the what. The how is how the technical approach to implement the solution, and who is the team and the resources needed to complete this, and when is the delivery timeline. So I think this is actually going off of an actual sprint in general. So instead of doing whatever you can do in 2 weeks, he's going, let's do this goal and let's reach his business case. How are we going to do this business case? And we're going to spread this out in business cases. So the why is the business case over. We're going to take this portion of time and focus on this specific business case. We're going to give it this amount of time. That's the when. This is when we're trying to shoot for it to be done. Who, all the team members to get done all of the work, and be able to see who we can assign stuff to. How they're going to be approaching to get down what features, and the what is the features, and the how is how the approach to get these features done for this business case, and that's all they need for planning. That's pretty much the brainstorming thing that Sergio's saying that he uses now. So he's saying the rules are, but he does have some rules. He does have a Notion template that I might try to give. I use Notion a lot. Notion's such a great tool, but we can only define, basically says that we can only define the what after we understand the why. So why our business needs this for such and such reason, and things like that. So cameras, all right, focus about it. So the once when you figure out the why, then you can figure out what features needed to be able to reach this why. And the how is, and he's basically doing a step down process. So you need to get this done in a step down process, because he's like, after you found out the what needs to get done, you figure out how you're gonna do it. And then once you figure out how, you can debate on who's gonna do the work and when and all of that stuff. But it seems like a really cool thing, and it seems like a very awesome thing to try out. I'm very interested in it, and if I was to be able to control it, I may take a trip into how to get some of this done and how to go about it, because it seems very interesting. This whole thing of using that template and going through that process over regular Scrum needs, you're figuring out what went well and kind of that stuff early on, and the whys and a bunch of other stuff way ahead of in advance. And you're having the real conversation about what needs to get done versus calling it sprint scrum lead, scrum leading and sprint planning and retros. You don't have to do all of that kind of stuff. You could probably still have a retro after and things, but this gives you, I feel like this will give you a way clearer expectation of what needs to get done uh, way in advance, and you just work through that specific epic or something like that. I actually might bring this up at work, who knows, but that's what Sergio goes. Go give him a follow on Twitter. I might leave his app at in the description and let him know about covering the his whole thread and things like that. But that is definitely an interesting take, and he also drops a lot of other stuff and information on his Twitter that seems pretty interesting. So go check that out.